Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. I'm your host, Rick the Barkeep, bringing you podcast 128 here at the Tavern, presented by HeroTaku.com. So, today I want to talk about a topic that's been dabbled a bit on message boards and forums and blogs for a number of years. But the thing is, it doesn't gain any traction with the fan community of Power Rangers simply because a lot of people resort to the fact that it's never going to happen. Which, that's a defeatist attitude, and sometimes I'm guilty of that myself, particularly during what I felt were the dark years of the Power Ranger franchise. But a lot of people just dismiss it saying it's not going to happen. Why even bother talking about it? And today, I would like to go ahead and talk about it because I think there is something worth talking about in this subject, and that is simply Power Rangers, the animated series. So, of course, Power Rangers being in live action is the bread and butter because we are adapting it from the Sentai. And since the Sentai is in live action and they're very successful at doing that, because of course Japan is just oversaturated with anime, not to, I mean, it's a lot worse in Japan than it is in America with animated programs. And of course, anime translates into manga and magazines and tons of other stuff. Being a live action television show in Japan that does all these special effects and everything is kind of a rare thing. I mean, outside of, Kamen Rider and Super Sentai, I couldn't tell you what else is on television here that does those type of things. Everything for kids is pretty much anime and those two shows right there. But that's getting into a different topic altogether. you know, but the thing is, Power Rangers is based on the Super Sentai formula, is based on the Super Sentai footage, which makes it a unique television show. But with that does come certain limitations that you're not able to go ahead and do in live action as opposed to animation. Now, let me just kind of go off track here just for a second to kind of give you guys my thought process and how I kind of came to this. Coming to Japan about 5 weeks ago, I didn't have cable, I didn't have regular internet access, so I couldn't watch Netflix or South Park Studios or anything, so I went to my DVD collection. And as it turns out, I have a lot of DVDs of The Simpsons. And because I'm a total nerd, I listened to the audio commentary on all the Simpsons episodes. And I did notice a reoccurring theme, something that I already kind of knew, but just listening to it recently kind of got my thought process going. And basically, Matt Groening, the producers, the writers, the animators, John Swartzwelder, everybody's basically saying when you have animation, you can do anything that you want. Matt Groening brought up a good example. We have the characters watching television in the series, which is not something that you actually see on live action television at the time, when Simpsons came out, and probably even today. I mean, the Simpsons are in there watching Itchy and Scratchy, they're watching McGarnagle, they're watching Krusty the Clown. But when you watch Married with Children, they don't often show what they're watching. You may hear the audio for it, and you're supposed to guess what they're actually seeing on screen, but you don't always see that. Same thing with Family Matters. They're not watching their interpretation of an Itchy and Scratchy cartoon, and if they are watching something, it's usually something that's in the public domain or something that their studio has rights to. The point is that they are doing things in The Simpsons by virtue of it being animation that you can't do in a live action series. Yes, the Bundys went to England. Yes, the Winslows, they went to France and whatnot. But the Simpsons went to Brazil, Japan, France, Israel, Canada. They went everywhere because the budget on animation series is different, and the fact that you can draw those things as opposed to actually going there, that's a big difference. One of the things that people criticize George Lucas for is all the computer imagery that he did in the prequel trilogy, but as somebody who's been in film will tell you, filming on location is a pain in the ass. And Lucas realized that. I mean, if you watch anything about A New Hope and all the crap he had to go through while he was in Africa and all that, filming the Tatooine stuff, you feel very sympathetic. Now, it doesn't necessarily justify what he did. I don't know, because I'm usually in the camp that the prequel trilogies were good films. But, there is that thing where you use too much CG, and because you want to cut back on the budget, it does ultimately save some money. And yes, Power Rangers does have CG in it, but because of the limitations that Power Rangers has, because of the self-imposed budget, because I feel it's self-imposed, and this is probably something for another time, they're not able to do all the things that we want to go ahead and do. But in animation, if you say, hey, we're going to have a great space battle with 100 starships in there, then you're going to have a great space battle with 100 starships in there because that's something that can be animated. Here's something else. In the TMNT movie, the audio commentary said the director basically went to the anime studio and they said, okay, we're going to do this battle sequence for you. You can have up to 999 characters up on the screen. How many do you want there? And he's like, 999. We have that ability to do anything we want, so let's do what we want. Okay, so how does this all really kind of relate into Power Rangers directly? I know I'm kind of rambling on because, I do have a healthy respect for animation in general because, again, you can do anything, you could be extremely creative, and like Granny said back on Tiny Toons, nothing is impossible, only the limits of your imagination. And unfortunately, in Power Rangers, there are limitations. And I'll give you a very good example of a limitation that Power Rangers has had recently, and how something like that could have been fixed if the series was actually in animation. So, as we all know, the big hoopla about Super Mega Force was at the end of the series, or in the season, we were going to have the Legendary War, in which a lot of the Rangers were going to come back. Now, of course, Saban mishandled and fumbled the ball on the entire process of informing people and choosing on who they wanted to come back, and only sending the actors down for 3 days to do the actual filming. And of course, we all know how that turned out utterly horrible. But I submit to you here, what if Power Rangers was animated and the Legendary Battle was an animated sequence? Well, first off, you can definitely animate all the Power Rangers in there that you want without having to worry about editing and accidentally, and that's in air quotes probably, getting Go Ranger and other Sentai heroes that did not appear in Power Rangers into the frame. You don't have to worry about shipping actors to another country because you can do audio recording over the phone. I mean, heck, they did Hank Williams Jr. over the phone for the Canyon Arrow ad. So that's a possibility. The point I'm getting at with this right here is that if it's animated, there's a lot less you have to do, and it's a lot easier process. So you get Jason David Frank, you don't have to send him down to New Zealand for 3 days and send him first class and whatnot. You get him to come to Los Angeles for maybe a couple of hours and record some dialogue, and he's out of there. Done, and you don't have to pay him as much. You don't have to pay for a plane ticket because he's already in LA, so he'll get there no problem. You can get, all those actors down there. You can do your own original battle. So what I'm saying is, because of the limitations of the live action series, it really hindered the Legendary Battle. Also, creative direction limited the Legendary Battle, but I would also say that budget was a big deal about that, and what they did, they just kind of screwed up royally. But again, if that was an animation, that's something that you could do that you weren't able to go ahead and do. Here's another thing. We are always limited by the Sentai footage on Power Rangers. Now, while coming up with a Power Ranger series is not based on Sentai footage in live action, maybe a topic for a different time, what if you just dropped live action altogether and went animation without having to rely on any of the pre-established stuff that Sentai does? For example, here, everybody made a big deal about skipping Go Buster, Go the Dinosaurs because Jurassic Park is out, or Jurassic World, excuse me, is out, and kids love dinosaurs. Well, if you did animation, then you could always do what you want to do without having to come up with, explanation on why we're going to have these in here as opposed to these. We're going to do dinosaurs as opposed to spy tech and whatever. Animators can design whatever they want. We want to do dinosaurs, but we don't like what they're doing over there in Kyryuger, so we're going to come up with our own dinosaur scheme. And maybe they don't want to do trains next year, and maybe they're not interested in ninjas because it is too Japanese. Then we come up with an animal based, or we come up with another space based, or an ocean based. We come up with a different type of story all to our own because, as they have tried to tell us, is that the appeal of trains are different in Japan as they are to America, as well as, say, ninjas and other different motifs that they have. But the ability to create your own series and your own iconography and your own Zords and costumes without having to be bound to the Japanese standards could be really freeing. Now, I like the idea that they have to take the Japanese stuff and adapt it. Sometimes they're successful, sometimes they do it horribly wrong. Yeah, Megaforce. Sorry, I couldn't do that right. Okay, let's kind of get back on track right here. So that's one thing you can go ahead and do, is that you don't have to, worry about the Sentai footage. And then, like I alluded to about the Super Mega Bow, you could also do stories where you bring back original characters. As I made a big deal about in a previous podcast, is what are you going to go ahead and do with Trini, because Thuy Trang has passed away? And I offer different ways of doing that. But if you had it in animation, then it's not really going to be that big of a deal, is it? You can obviously animate her to look like Thuy Trang, and then you can get anybody to voice her in that role. Because you know what? I would like to have the original characters come back and voice themselves, which is something you can definitely do in animation, but it's not going to always be necessary or available. I mean, okay, this may be a cheap shot to David Yost, but he doesn't want to come back for Power Rangers. But if they do something where they want Billy, then they're going to hire somebody else who is not Billy to voice him. And that's going to be the sad truth of the matter, but the thing is, you get to tell a story about Billy that you could not do in live action in any form, because David Yost and his issues with it. I mean, okay, it's not David Yost's issues, but I'm saying the problems surrounding the production crew and David Yost, which we've talked about in detail before, is going to limit his ability to return to the series. But by having it animated, you can get around that. Yes, it may be dishonest and all that, but if you have a story about Billy that you want to go ahead and tell, then that's going to be your best way of doing it, is it not? Not to mention, we talked about the Hexagon project before, and how, again, if you go down to New Zealand with that, it's going to be extremely expensive to get all these guest stars in there. But if you made it as an animation kind of thing, then you work around all those problems. You can have Joel as the helicopter pilot to the Hexagon project. You can have Miss Fairweather show up and give her husband moral support. You can have the Space Rangers pop in every now and then. You can go to all these multiple planets with these unique designs and all that. You can free yourself up to tell the story that you want to tell without being limited. Now, yes, there is something to be said about being limited in what you can and cannot do with the series, because I mean, heck, look what they do with Power Rangers in Space. That's probably the best example of being limited. They have a small budget and doing something amazing. You get the creativity with that. But I think you can still do the same thing with animation and have all the creativity in the world and still have a decent budget. I mean, the budget they have for The Simpsons is decent in itself, but again, look at all the amazing things they can go ahead and do with that. I just think that animation is something that I think Power Rangers needs to get into. Because you can still have the main live action series, but why not have a sequel animation series? This is something I've talked about a number of times on other things, where why can't we have two concurrent running Power Ranger series? One for the kids, one for the adults, or one that are on equal footing with each other, basically. I mean, look at Star Trek, you had Next Gen, DS9, and Voyager all on at the same time, and then you had DS9, Voyager on at the same time, then you had Voyager and then Enterprise was on. But for the most part, through that 15-year period, a lot of the shows overlapped each other, and that's why you had characters like Riker and Picard and Quark and everybody that were, showing up in different episodes of different shows. And that's something you can seriously do with Power Rangers now in live action, but it makes it a lot easier to do it in animation. Um, because you can have, Carter show up and interact with, who am I thinking? With Katie from Time Force. You can have an entire episode based on those two characters where they travel to the moon and go under the surface, or something crazy. I don't know. I can't think of anything imaginative at the moment, but you get my point. You can take characters who you couldn't get the actors back for before, and get people to voice them, whether it's the original actors or not, and get them to do things that you couldn't do because of the limitation of the budget and the limitation of the Sentai footage in the current series. Because does anybody really think that Tommy's going to come back as the Silver Ranger in Dino Supercharge? I don't think so. But if it was animated, then that makes that possibility a lot more likely. Because let's take another animated series I love. Look at Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. I mean, look how many superheroes were popping up in the background and got their moment in the spotlight that you couldn't do with a live action show. I don't care what they say about the live action kind of stuff. You're not going to have something that's Avengers quality, Avengers style, or Justice League style on the small screen like that unless it is something that is animated or the rules of television completely change. By which I mean probably movies go out of style, which I doubt that would go ahead and happen. And I keep getting kind of off topic because this is really a wide ranging topic about animation. And about what Power Rangers should go ahead and do. And it gets into a lot of the things about the series, the budget, the unions, the non unions, and all that crazy stuff that Saban likes to go ahead and pull off. But we've seen a lot of television shows go non union and still come out rather decently. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the second Ninja Turtles animated television series, but you know what? The voice acting was pretty decent. They had some interesting stories in it, but it just wasn't my thing ultimately. But that was a non-union product. And it was still able to churn out quality programming. And Power Rangers, of course, is non-union, and it still has quality programming. But imagine how much better it can be when you get like veteran voice actors to go ahead and do the series. That's something I ultimately would like to go ahead and see. Is Power Rangers go into the realm of animation and see what they do with it. When you take off the shackles of being limited to live action and another country's footage, then what can you do with Power Rangers? I mean, because I don't think we would see, if Dino Charge was an animated series as opposed to live action, I don't think we'd see the same type of plot lines. I don't think we would see a lot of things happening. Yes, there's a lot of good things happening, but how much more interesting would it be if, like, they didn't have the Cinderella costume and they could make Poisandra look any way that they want. Something that's a little bit more lifelike, maybe. Something that's a little bit more interesting. Not to say that she isn't, but I'm saying imagine what you can do when you have those character traits but have a different design altogether. Maybe you can get Sledge to actually, have a moving mouth or something, be something a little bit more intimidating, or not have reoccurring villains in the background that shouldn't actually be there. Yes, somebody showed me the picture. She should not be in that prison, but we'll get to that when we get to that. The thing is that again, you can do anything. And why are Power Rangers taking up the opportunity to do anything? It just shows to me that they're really stagnant and not trying to try something new. I mean, a lot of people say animated shows should go live action when they do a theatrical release. And I say, why? Because you're just limiting yourself. Why do you want to see a cartoon go, live action? Just see the cartoon as a cartoon on the big screen. It worked, I mean, just as a comparison, Transformers, 85 movie live action, amazing success. It was great. And then you take the live action of the 2007 film, and you kind of see my point there. Again, I keep getting off topic because there's so many things to go ahead and talk about in regards to this. But I will go ahead and leave you guys with what I ultimately feel should happen. I think Power Rangers needs to continue the live action stuff for as long as they can. But at some point, they need to experiment in animation, whether it's shorts, a feature film, or a new series altogether, where you can do those things that you could previously not do. And specifically, I mean, bring past Rangers together. Get them in groups, have characters interact that would not normally interact. Bring back Kimberly and have her continue her storylines and what she was doing. Bring back these secondary characters that we don't hear of anymore and have them play important roles. All the things that you would normally do in an animated series, do that for Power Rangers. Stop limiting yourself, Saban, to what you have there. And yes, is it going to be risky to go into another medium? Yeah, but again, we're talking about a franchise. We're not talking about a singular television show. If we were just talking about Power Rangers, if it lasted for the 60 episodes and ended at Doomsday, that's one thing. But this is a franchise on the same level as the Avengers and Justice League and Harry Potter and Pokemon. It's up there with one of the heavy hitter franchises. And people want to deny that all you want. I mean, go ahead and all that. But again, you have a big franchise that can go anywhere it wants, and you choose to stay in live action and not experiment and try something different to free up your production, to free up your writers, to free up the creativity and give the fans something interesting. Are people going to be upset that there's an animated Power Rangers? Probably. But ultimately, I think it'd be for the benefit of the series if you can get into a medium where you can do anything. I think Power Rangers needs that freedom. They need to be able to do things that they haven't done before to get out of this constrictive box that we call the Sentai footage. Because that's ultimately what it is that they are limited by the Sentai. They know they're limited by the Sentai, and they write to limit themselves. And I'm not saying that's true of all writers, but I would say the majority of writers that come on Power Rangers, based on what I'm seeing in episodes and everything, is that they're not trying to create interesting stories, but they're trying to work around the Sentai footage. I mean, Forever Red and what Bomic did was amazing, but he didn't rely on Sentai footage. He relied on Power Rangers lore, history, and a new creative style. Now, of course, we all know the infamous story that it was going over budget, and Bandai had to, pay to do this with the Wild Force Rider, but they couldn't do the Megazord battle because, well, as executives say, you're trying to sell toys, which I don't believe that's the case because Amit Bhaumek was not writing a script to sell toys. He was writing a script to honor the history of Power Rangers. And before I get into a Forever Red rant again, what if Forever Red was animated? Yeah, we wouldn't get to see the live action guys on screen, but how often are we actually going to see that nowadays with, first of all, so many Red Rangers and them being in different countries and all this other crazy stuff? When are we going to see another Forever Red again? Probably not anytime in the near future if the legendary battle is any indication of that. But if you wanted to do, some with all 20 Red Rangers today on animation, you can do that. You can fly him in for a couple of lines of dialogue. I mean, heck, you could have got, David Bacon to reprise the role of Orico, although I still don't know why they didn't ask him back for that. But in any case, you could do things that you're not limited to where you don't have executives saying, oh, we need to sell toys, you need to put this in there. I mean, I'm sure they'd still say that, but I think it would be, less obvious because, I mean, does anybody write in saying to The Simpsons, oh, you need to have more of this because this is the best-selling toy out there? I don't think it does. Power Rangers needs to get itself out of this limited medium of live action and experiment with animation. Now, am I saying stop the live action shows? Of course not. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is try something new, do something else, tell us these amazing stories that we couldn't tell before. Now, maybe they will have an animated series and maybe they won't do that. Maybe it will be horrible and they've limited themselves. Or maybe the series will get a bigger budget. Maybe they'll change to union actors and they can start doing a lot of these amazing things again. But for the time being, it doesn't seem like they're doing any of that, and I would really like to see them, again, experiment, try something new, and go into animation. I don't think it's a waste of time. I think it is something they can ultimately do, and I think the fans would love it. I mean, again, who in here, wherever here is, I guess, would not want to see an animated Power Ranger series where they can expand the universe and do all that great world building and develop characters and all that? Because again, you're free to do more character development in animation than you are live action, I would argue, for a show like Power Rangers. So, yeah, I know I'm rambling on, but that's the whole point of these podcasts is I don't have a clear direction. I have a topic and I talk about it, and that is what I've done, by darn. So I want to know what you guys think. Am I making any good points about the animation? Am I, making any negative points about animation? What do you guys want to see? Should there be an animated Power Rangers? Should they stick to live action or whatever? What are your comments on this particular topic? Write it down below. So I want to thank you all for listening. I look forward to your comments. But until next time, have a good evening, and the tavern is now closed.